I'll talk to you today about JSWD, and that stands for JavaScript World Domination. Who's up for world domination? A few. All right, cool. Maybe I'll convince the rest by the end of the talk. My name is Lehnardt. You may know me from things on the internet. I work on CouchDB, have for a long time. I did Mustache.js. I didn't invent Mustache the thing, but I did the JavaScript port, and that has since been taken over by other people, but I'm still famous for it because it's on my GitHub. The latest thing I'm doing, incidentally, with Gregor and Alex, who isn't here, is a thing called Hoodie that you may have heard of or will hear about later a little bit. And I'm one of the curators of JSConf.eu, which is another not as cool JavaScript conference in Berlin. I'll be around for the next 2 days, and if you have any questions about my projects, about the things I'm talking about, or just generally, like, feel free to chat me up. Like, I'm not some sort of celebrity. You can talk to me. I'll be here. But if after the 2 days you go home and then maybe you look at some of the stuff, or you remember, oh, Jan said that thing, I wanted to have a clarification on that. Oh, damn, Jan isn't around anymore. He's back in Berlin. Send me an email. I'm happy to answer. And if you do the Twitter, you can follow me as well. So that's me. The reason I'm in technology is, of course, a curiosity for computers and how to build stuff, but the reason I stick around in any particular, well, I guess community, is the people. My early days, I did web development on AOL dial-up. You all have been there, I guess. And I found like a web design development community in Germany that had at its core teaching other people how to do websites. And I joined that community and I learned from them how to do websites, and then I taught other people who were new there how to do websites. And I still have friends from, that's now like 13 years ago, and that's really cool. From there, because that was like in the Netscape 3 days, maybe Netscape 4 came out, and the JavaScript programming was really sucky. It's like, fuck the front end, I'll go to the back end. I learned all that I could to do PHP. Just to have another thing, another itch I can scratch and do some stuff there. But again, I stayed for the people, and this is maybe 8 to 10 years now, and I still go out drinking with these guys, and they're really cool. So I made friends along the way. And it's, again, the people. And from PHP, it went to MySQL, and it's the same story again. And from then, it went to CouchDB. And CouchDB is different because there was no community. I was like number 2 in CouchDB, and now number 1 in CouchDB. So like, I am the community, or I am the first person in the community to help build it. And we actually have a community, and I'm super proud of it, and it's really cool to have that. But whenever things get tough in tech or in the community, it is remembering that the people who I'm actually working with are super great. People who like share my interests, have the same ideals, maybe we have a common enemy. I guess all this group behavior is really, really cool. So I'm also part of the JavaScript community, and the JavaScript community is special in 2 regards, and I'll illustrate that with a bunch of detours. This whole talk in the next, oopsie daisy, in the next few minutes, say maybe 40 minutes, is going to be sort of a where we are now, how we got here, and where we were going. And that sounds incredibly boring, I know. But I'm trying to make it fun, and this is for you and for us. So I hope it's relevant for you. So open source communities are great, but the JavaScript community is special. Oh, I actually have a slide about that as well. Cool. And to explain that, I have to go to 2008 and to the Ruby community. Who here is in the Ruby community? Cool, awesome. Who knows who this is? Nobody, excellent. So in 2008, this man is called Peter Ford in Toronto, Canada, put up a conference called Ruby Fringe. It looked like that. And it was the first conference of its kind. A bunch of people in the room, and people giving inspirational talks about a technology topic instead of giving technology talks about a technology topic. So people there didn't learn like the latest features in the runtime, the new things in the standard library, the new techniques to do whatever. Like that was all covered by other conferences. But Pete got people together to talk about their experiences, the lessons they learned, the reasons why people would do things, why they were doing the things they were doing, and was hugely inspirational for the people. Like, to anyone who has been at Ruby Fringe, Anyone here? Was it the Ruby Fringe? It was a pivotal moment for their life. Not their professional career or for their Ruby nerdery, for their life. It was immense. And one of the people who was there is a man called Chris Williams. The guy on my right, on your left, I guess. You can see this. Chris saw that is the future of tech conferences. And the inspirational talks lit a spark in him. So I got to do something, but he had nothing to go with. And at the time, we were IM buddies. That's the thing you did before social networks, or it's the thing I still do instead of social networks, I guess. Twitter doesn't count. It's where you meet somebody on the internet, and you have to exchange messages in real time, so you give them their AIM handle, or your ICQ number, or Jabber these days, maybe Google Chat. But Chris and I, through whatever fate, got to be IM buddies, and then he's in Washington, on the East Coast in the US, and I'm in Berlin, Germany. So whenever he chats me up, it's like 2, 3 in the morning, where I'm right before falling asleep, but still doing some computing in bed, as you do, right? So a message pops up, hey, Jan, what do you think about if somebody would do a JavaScript conference? I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. In 2008, there were no JavaScript conferences. None. There was in 1998, there was a JavaScript summit where engine developers came together once. There was no JavaScript conferences, and that was at a time where things like RailsConf and RubyConf and PHP conferences drew thousands and thousands of people. And yet, hundreds of thousands of people were doing JavaScript comparatively, but there was no conference for this. So yeah, JavaScript conference, that would make sense. And then he asked, if I were to do a JavaScript conference, what do you think about that? I'm like, yeah, do it. Cool. I'm like, super inspirational / tired, get off my back, I want to go to sleep, but yay, do it, it's a good idea. And then he started setting up what is now known as JSConf. And about halfway between our initial chat and the actual event, he chatted to me again 2, 3 in the morning. Hey, Jan, we're doing this now, but it's not looking really good. We're not selling enough tickets. And we were a little bit crazy, me and my wife, Laura. We put the mortgage of our house towards the rent of the venue. If we lose the mortgage, well, if I lose the mortgage, I lose the wife. I'm not interested in that, so we got to figure that out somehow. And in a moment of despair and encouragement, and again, tiredness, get off my back, I want to sleep, I told him, hey, if you pull this off, I'll take it to Europe. I'll do one in Berlin. And then I fell asleep and forgot about it. And then JSConf US turned out to be a success. It sold out in April 2009. We met in Washington in a venue it's a little bit different from here. It was in a hotel, but it was all the same. Bunch of geeks and chairs. It was really cool. At that time, I was the database guy. And as the database guy, I get to talk to all the different language communities. Like the Python people want to use CouchDB, the PHP people, the Ruby people, some Java people, even .NET people, and all the other crazy ones as well. So I had at least a little bit of professional relations with the different JavaScript, with the different programming communities. And from all these communities, people came because everybody I'm a Python programmer, but we have this front-end stuff that I need to do in JavaScript, or I'm a PHP programmer, and we need to do this JavaScript on the front end, or I'm one of the other ones, I need to do some JavaScript on the front end. And everybody had to do some JavaScript on the front end. But they all came together for this JS thing. And then we had some talks, and Chris didn't do Ruby Fringe exactly, so there were technical talks, mostly, but some inspirational as well. But the inspiration, was made by made itself basically, because after lunch, roughly in the afternoon of the first day, the self-consciousness of the group changed from we all these different communities come together because we all do some JavaScript, and it turned around to fuck, we're a JavaScript community, and we all do this other stuff to support the stuff we really care about, which is JavaScript in the front end, which solves the problems our users and customers have, which is where our business value lies, is where our heart is, and all the other supporting stuff, it's just stuff we have to do because there needs to be a backend and it needs to be written in something. But fuck, we're the JavaScript community. And that was the birth of the JavaScript community, and that was really, really cool. Because there was none before. People were doing JavaScript, but it wasn't a community. So JSConf made that. And And in the few articles that were written about JSConf, there was a common thread, and it went something like, JSConf US was the homecoming of a community that didn't know it existed. And that's entirely true. It's really, really cool. And from there, oh yeah, in the closing notes, Chris and Laura got up and said, thank you, thanks everybody for coming, thanks to the sponsors for making this a success. They went through the story, how they nearly lost their house, and they got extra applause for that. And towards the end, Chris said, hey, could Jan stand up for a second? I'm like, okay, not suspecting anything. And then he brought up the topic of the nearly failing conference again, and that I had sent him an IM supporting him, and he thanked me for that, and that he said I would do the conference in Berlin if this was going to be a success. This was a success, so you're going to bring it to Berlin. So he's going to bring it to Berlin, and I'm like, yay, I'll bring it to Berlin. Like, fuck, I got to do this now. But luckily, the night before, that was socializing and partying is a thing that we do at JSConf, and I believe we'll do this here as well. But at that party, I met 2 other crazy Germans, Holger and Malte. And we got talking already, like, we got to do this somehow, we got to take this. So I already had partners in crime, and they got up right away. It's like, yes, damn right, we'll do it. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm not alone with this. And from this, we did JSConf EU, which also turned like running on the success of JSConf US. I don't want to claim anything. We just copied the format and did it in Berlin. It's like, no original value here. But that was a success, and we're doing the 5th year now. US is in 4 weeks in Florida. We'll be in Berlin again in September. So it's going great. And then I'm also involved in the Berlin JavaScript user group, which is like a monthly meetup, like the tech meetup here, but just for JavaScript stuff. And we got an email one day, hey, I'm doing this conference in Poland. Can I come by and tell you about it? And we'll make a little bit of a raffle, and I give away a ticket. We're like, sure, free tickets, why not? So this guy, Damian from Warsaw, comes over and talks about his conference, Front Trends. And he goes on to say, well, I went to JSConf EU, and I had such a great time, and I was so inspired when I got home. I wanted to have something here as well for the people who live here. And me and my friend, we started looking for somebody to do a conference, and we couldn't find anyone. But then we thought we'd just do one ourselves. And my heart exploded. That somebody would go on, like running a conference is really hard. You could lose your house or your wife depending on how it goes. It's a lot of work. And somebody goes on like, this is too great to not be done. We need to do this, and if nobody else does, we have to do it. And they made a conference called Front Trends. They gave away the ticket, of course. I went in the 2nd year. I spoke there. It's a fantastic event. Much like this, bunch of geeks in chairs in a rough building. It's really, really cool. And they're in the 4th year now. They have a spin-off called Faulty Values, which is a little bit more tacky. And they have other conferences starting around that as well. The Railsbury conference is a big one from there. And from then on, well, like very early on, we started seeing people who came to JSConf going home and taking all the ideas and the conversations and the people and the inspiration back and doing their own events. And then we have things like TXJS in Austin, EmpireJS in New York, Cascadia in Seattle, CampJS in Australia or New Zealand, I keep forgetting. There's a JS camp was in Asia, somewhere, Singapore, I forget. Dominic was there. Never mind. We have a whole group of JSConfs now in EU and US, obviously, but in Argentina, Brazil, Australia, Asia. I keep forgetting them, it's too many now. And all these cool events keep happening because people thought, oh my God, this is great, we need to bring this to more people. And that's just fantastic. So where I'm going with this is that well, Scotland JS is in its 2nd year, and I couldn't be here last year. Who was here last year? Was it any good? It was good. All right, cool. Woo! It was good. Yay! Good job, Peter. Anyway, sorry, spontaneous outburst. It's the coffee kicking in. This is like this is your event. Like this is Pete's event. This is your event. This is a thing on its own, but it is part of a larger narrative, a part of a larger history. And even though it's just 5 fucking years, and I'm calling it history, it comes like you're a part of the community if you realize it or not, that has been doing this out of passion for JavaScript. So I'm telling you, like you or we are something, or we're an important part of something bigger. And that's why the JavaScript community is special. The other communities do other cool stuff, but we're doing our stuff in our very specific way. It's very cool. All right, I said there's two things that make JavaScript special. The other thing is obviously the web. The web disrupts everything. And technically, it's the internet that disrupts everything, and the web is just the application layer on top of it that people interface with it, but that doesn't matter. That's all right. We can wait. I get some water in the meantime. That's cool. That's the same time to wake up, by the way. You guys are amazing for being here this early. The only reason why I'm here on stage and not asleep is because I'm an hour behind in Berlin. So this is actually an hour later for me. That's the only reason I'm alive now.
It is turning off, sorry.
That's cool, I can wait. All good, all good. So the web is disrupting just about everything. There's not an industry that was touched or is still in the process of being touched. The decentralization, the means of publication of the web. And the nice thing, or the thing that makes JavaScript special here, it sits on top of this vast layer that disrupts everything from culture and business, people, communities, everything. Well, we're just riding the wave on top of this and building our own wave on top, like building yet more momentum there. And there's a quote by a guy called Jeff Atwood. He's also known as Coding Horror. If you don't know that, he's one of the founders of Stack Overflow, which you should all use every day. The law is called, any application that can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript. And it's so fucking true. This was in 2007. That was the time when we got useful email clients on the web, when Maps was around for a while, but we got all the things that we had desktop versions of that, and then went on the web, and that's what he meant. He didn't realize that that was going to be even truer. This is like Moore's law for the web. Anything new that can be done, like JavaScript is penetrating all the fields. So JavaScript in the front end is a no-brainer, of course. And then JavaScript in the server has been done since the late 90s, but it didn't take off until Node.js. Who here does Node.js? Woohoo! So a fun side story I'm really proud of. At the first JSConf EU in 2009, Ryan Dahl, who invented Node, gave the first really public and broadly received presentation about Node.js. It's the thing that made Node.js, at least in the beginning. And it was done on my laptop because his didn't work with the audio, with the visual. So I have this little teensy-weensy bit of history of Node.js I'm super proud of. Anyway, so Node.js makes server-side, or brings JavaScript to the server side, or brings the server side to people who program JavaScript. That's an important distinction. People who were afraid of server-side stuff now see, oh, all the things that I know about writing evented code just works on the server now, and well, instead of making an AJAX call, I make a database call, and it returns eventually, and I can do stuff with it. That's great. So that's why Node.js is so powerful. It democratizes access to server to a whole new generation of people who weren't considering themselves people who could program on the back end. And then last year, about the past 2 years, there were a few things where people, oh wait, let me back up. The server-side programming is of course important to web people, but the thing that is just starting to crystallize what Node.js does as well, it's just a general purpose systems programming language. It's just a POSIX API. If you're a systems programmer, it's like all the stuff you've done for ages, you can just use there. And that means we can build everything from controlling embedded systems to all sorts of crazy shit. Controlling robots, having flying drones. And then last year, and that again has to do with JSConf.eu, and I swear this is the last time I'm bragging about it. We asked Felix Geisendörfer to do a node event like before the JSConf. Like, yeah, just make a meetup or a mini conference, just one day or a half day or whatever. And he's like, oh, I hate conferences, I really don't want to do this. But I bought this AR drone that flies around, and there is like an embedded system on it, and maybe we can do something with it. I started playing with this. So I invented a nodecopter. Who here went to a nodecopter? Who here plans to go to the nodecopter on Saturday? Why are the others are not going? You should totally do this. It's like one of the funnest things ever. So we started doing one in Berlin. It's these helicopter things, and you can control them. You can, by default, you have like a mobile phone app, and you can fly them around. But there's just a serial port, so you can send signal messages to it to do stuff. And since Node.js is a really nice systems programming language, people build a bunch of libraries to make this really easy. And suddenly, people who had a grasp for, on the one hand, like building nice UIs, like one of the core contributors of jQuery is helping out with this. And jQuery is like, the biggest thing that jQuery did is invent a really intuitive API. There's lots of things wrong with jQuery, but there's a lot of things right with jQuery as well. Sorry. So we would get people who are good at making good APIs, building APIs to control hardware, and thus exposing the hardware level of computing to a whole new generation of people. And you can get started without any programming knowledge as well, which is really nice. Plus, Nodecopter goes so far that you can put on, like, you can soldier on like custom modules and custom sensors onto it. So you actually get into the physical part of the hardware as well. And again, that's just people who weren't thinking of themselves as hackers or systems programmers or these hardcore people that some exist and some don't. But yeah, it was really cool that so many people could do this. And it was pretty clear early on after this event that this is going to catch on. And we had about, I don't know, about 250,000 Nodecopter events since September last year all over the world. It's not entirely true, maybe 20 or so. But it's so much fun. You can bring the kids and the family, and it's the nerdy, one of the nerdiest events you could go to in every stereotypical way. But it's also so much fun. So you should totally, if you have time on Saturday and haven't signed up yet, and if there's still tickets, I'm sorry if there aren't, you should totally go. All right. So JavaScript is special because it just goes everywhere. And well, some of you may have seen like the latest stuff Mozilla is doing with the ASM.js, like assembly-like JavaScript that allows for really high performance optimizations. And then they ported the Unreal game engine into the browser, and you can just play a 3D game live rendered in JavaScript. That is like 1.5 million lines of C++ originally. So we'll bridge all of computing, and we'll do all in JavaScript. And that's what I kind of call the JavaScript world domination. I want to make one important point. I'm not saying that everybody will be doing JavaScript all the time. Like a bunch of you who raised their hands from the Ruby community, you will be using Ruby for the foreseeable future. Do not worry about this. We're not going to do a JavaScript monoculture. I'm not interested in that either. When I started to explain why we have these great events, I started in the Ruby community. We need different communities that have different cultures that come up with their own original ideas that we can then cross-pollinate between all the communities to bring everybody forward. We need to learn from them. Other things that the Ruby people are good at is like the coaching, the whole Rails girls thing that I'll go into later as well. A fanatical devotion to doing test-driven development or software testing and automation. And the Python community teaches us how to get more kids and more diverse crowds into computing. Like, everybody has their own strengths, and we need that to collectively go forward. But so it will be not just JS, but JavaScript will be the biggest player in all of IT. Like, make no mistake. So JavaScript will rule. I hope you agree. So, with that, we will be building the future. Since we're all JavaScript programmers here, and maybe if you aren't, you will be soon. we will be building the IT infrastructures and software and everything of the future. And since software just drives about everything, and everything that isn't driven by software is just waiting to be started to be driven by software. You and me, we will be building the future. And I don't want to say I'm a history buff because I'm not reading history books back to back, but I do like to read a lot of history stuff on Wikipedia when I'm lazy. So I was thinking, if we were going to build the future, like how can we make sure we don't fuck up? Like you said, that's a bit of a like no pressure here. I kind of want to get it right. And then I looked at historical precedents. There's this phrase, to be on the wrong side of history. And it comes up when there's contentious issues like women's rights, slavery, the people of color issue in America, all sorts of things. And there's people who are arguing for all these, for change. And in hindsight, well, stopping slavery is obvious, isn't it? Or like democratizing the world, it's kind of obvious. Maybe the means, maybe the wrongs, but the idea is right. Freeing people, getting more access to things. Yeah, the meta story here is usually that a select small group of people have access to a resource, money, knowledge, influence. Like, for example, the church had influence in media and culture for about 2 millennia, and we're all still suffering for that. What history does in hindsight usually is taking what is in the hands of a few and giving it to more people. Give more people to be free, like the notion of a free person is a relatively recent idea. The right to choose your own job, the right to choose your partner, the right, all these individual rights that we have, the right to participate in the political discourse, all these kind of things. Sorry. When these issues come up, there's always people who argue for the status quo, and they're not just like random people, they're usually people from the class who are on the verge of losing whatever made them powerful. But there's always people who argue against what history will eventually decide otherwise for. These people are on the wrong side, we're on the wrong side of history. And if I look at this in a bit of a broader sense or perspective, before I was born, this planet was around for about 5 billion years and has about 5 billion years on the other side after my life. So the thing that I can do is really tiny on the scale of everything. And I don't think about this every day because it's really depressing. But this is my one shot to make a mark. And I want to end up on Wikipedia being the person, like I don't want to be on that slide in 100 years by somebody like that guy who had totally the wrong ideas. Like I want to be on the right side of history. And my time here is too short and too valuable to argue or to work against what is obviously the wrong idea. I want to be on the right side of history. So how do we make sure that when we build the future, we build the right future, that we don't end up in that corner that like history will decide that we were on the wrong side. And again, I'm going to call this like a democratization. Whatever the resource is that is constrained to the few powerful, that gets distributed to everybody else. I call this democratization. And then let's look at our industry from the bottom up. What do we need to do in internet? Networks. All right, let's look at networks. Is anybody here who honestly doesn't hate their telecommunications provider? Right, you work for one. All right, cool. There's a few ones that are cool, but they're very, 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 very rare. The wired networks are usually controlled by a few oligarchs that usually come out of state monopolies. Wireless is even worse. And I think my beef that I have with the people who run the networks that we do all this great stuff on top of can be summarized to this idea. So the way we as society decided to run life is we divide our world up into states. And everybody who lives and was born in a particular state owns the state, is represented by the state. It's not that you're confined in this box, but the state is a representation of your personal power. That's the idea of how we do of democracy. What the states then do is they usually auction off, or in the case of the wide internet, they just like dug up holes in the ground that belong to everybody and that the state was just representing for us to put the cables in. And in the case of the wireless providers, they auction off spectrums for communications. So we grant, like, through the power of the state that belongs to us, to every one of you. Like, I'm a guest here in this country, but in my country I am everybody who's from here. English or Scottish, I do not care. You own this. This is yours. And you grant the telecommunication providers the administration of this resource and the creation of a service that you can use through the resource that belongs to you. And yet, they fuck everyone over. It's like they charge you way too much for crappy access, crappy service, crappy extra fees. When you're starting to go into another country, it's completely fucked up. It's like I pay like a blood in the hand for a kilobyte of bandwidth when I'm here. It's really, 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 really bad. And the whole idea that a company, that we grant access or grant administration of a resource that belongs to us that then rips us off, that doesn't make any sense in my head. The German, like Deutsche Telekom, they made a profit of 18 billion euros before taxes in 2012. And they're now, like, that wasn't enough profit, so they're now making the internet slower in Germany. And it isn't great to begin with. And I'm like, wait a second. You made 18 billion euros of profit that could have gone into better infrastructure, better wireless services, broader services, faster internet for more people, internet for people who can't afford the 30, 40 bucks they want every month. And somehow that is a good thing, that they keep the money to the few shareholders that they have. Like, I'm sensing a pattern here. There's a resource that is controlled by a select few. Maybe there's democratization in order. So that sucks. And so that's networks. That's my network rant. Talk to me about this, how we can fix this later. But this is really annoying. But this is where history will prove that the telecommunications companies of today are on the wrong side. Like, I have no mistake about that. Like, no doubt about that. But if we go a level up, going back to Sir Tim, when he invented the web, he thought everybody would run the web server. By everybody, he meant everybody, not just nerds, not just sysadmins for bigger corporations. The web was meant to be decentralized, and to a degree it is. But largely what happened is that the people who built the early infrastructure were paid to build a system like this, a centralized system, where back in the day you had the AOLs and Netscapes and Microsofts maybe that were putting money into building Apache, HTTPD, IIS, the AOL web server, all these things. And they built, they made software really good to run a centralized web service, which is really good because then the people who are in the center are in power. But that's, like, they use the decentralized technology to build a centralized service. And today, these people are Facebook and Google and so on. So the history repeats itself. So I'm saying, my claim is that the pioneers of the early days, like, wait, one step back. The Apache web servers, like, it's a phenomenal success. It's an open source software that powers most of the internet. That's incredibly cool. But I'm still saying the people who built this well, I know the reason for it. I don't want to say for whatever reason, but they failed to implement the vision of the web properly. And it's just a matter of time until people will do that. And if we don't want to waste our time on this planet, we may as well do it ourselves, because we know that we will be on the right side of history for building a decentralized internet. And the reason they built the centralized internet is because they were paid to do that. There was a financial incentive. So we gotta kind of try to figure out how to build better technology and how to make it viable for people to build that technology so they can benefit from it. So we need to build better businesses. We need to figure out how to make money from a decentralized internet to help us build the software that we need to literally get everybody that the home router at home is actually your entry to a distributed social network that nobody has to think about, that nobody has to understand, but that people can just use. This is really, really, really important, and we will get there, and it may take a little while, but like, I'm putting all my energy into that because I know it's the right side of history, and I might be the early crazy one, but I'm not the only one. That's really cool, that I know. So we need to build better businesses that make use of this. I'm not the biggest fan of capitalism, but I understand its reality, and it's the thing we need to work with. Like, I'm also a very pragmatic person, and like, hey, what are the constraints? What can we do? So I'll just take capitalism as a hack. Capitalism is a tool to scale ideas to great mass, or to great size. And I want to figure out how to build companies that have the right values, that have the right ideas, that are on the right side of history, but that can use, once they figure out how to generate value, like monetary value and societal value. And I want to use capitalism to scale that globally and just like get all the old school telcos out of the way. Okay, cool. So here's another side rant. Who here is in a startup that has venture capital? Not too many people. I will offend you now. I apologize. It's not a personal thing. Like, I have been in one as well. So here's my lessons learned. Like, fuck the VC-driven model. That's all bullshit. So here's what happens if you take venture capital. You get 2 years where you build something that you love, that you put all your blood and sweat in, that you put in all your personal relations, that you may expose to a bunch of people on the internet. Maybe you get 100,000 users that trust you, and you fail to make a business out of it. That's fine. Or you manage to make a business out of it, but it doesn't grow enough. Or you need to make the business so big that you can IPO. In all three cases, in the one case, you get sold to Google or Yahoo, and your product will be sunsetted eventually. Sunsetting is like a California term for, we just shut this down and everybody who's using your service is fucked. They call this sunsetting because it's so cute. This is you putting your personality on stage like I do right now and fucking everyone over that trusts you. That's what you do when you do that kind of a business. Feel free to do that. I'm done with this. There's other outcomes out of this, but the only real impact that people make, not the only one, but the biggest impact that you make is that the people who gave you money originally are not the venture capitalists. They have people who give them money again, and these are a real select few. There was a video a couple of weeks ago that showed the wealth distribution in America, where everybody thought it was like this, and they knew it was a little bit off. Like they wanted to be like this, and they thought it was like this. It was actually like this. Very few very rich people, they fund everything that we do. And every time a startup gets sold, a VC company flips, whatever, they get a little bit richer. And that's that. That's so on the wrong side of history, I don't even know where to begin. So a little rant on the side here. Sorry about that. So I can dream, right? I want to have a better future. So I'll go back to network carriers. You all know Mozilla, right? Anybody who doesn't know Mozilla? You work for Mozilla. He's trolling. Bad person. I'll come to you later. Mozilla obviously does a lot of great stuff for open source. You may or may not know how Mozilla is set up as an organization. Mozilla has two parts. It's a non-profit and a for-profit. And the non-profit owns the for-profit. The result is that the statutes of the non-profit direct what Mozilla as an organization can and will do in the future. The people who are, actually, the for-profit can take advantage of markets, of the whole capitalist reality to scale these ideas to a big audience, and it works. It works fantastically. It's really, really cool. But the setup ensures that the people who are in charge of the money are never in charge of the vision. And we live in a society and in a culture where the people who are in charge of the money are also in charge of the vision. And it's the worst idea ever. And Mozilla is one of the very few institutions that that do it right and do it the other way around. And there's a few more things in other, like mostly art related communities where this is a model. But like this should be the standard model for doing companies. And I'm personally currently doing 2 companies that I want to set up in that way. And I first need to like validate that I have some value, that I can actually use capitalism as a tool to scale. But once I've figured that out, I will turn over the ownership of the company to a nonprofit, that the people who will be running the company in the future, will be in charge of the money, can never fuck up the vision. It's really important. So now think, you have an organization like Mozilla where the people in charge of the money can never change their ideals. And instead of doing a web browser, a mobile operating system, and a bunch of other services, they do a network carrier, a telco. Maybe a local one, maybe the model gets cloned and we have a few regional ones and they all connect, or maybe it's a global one, I don't care. Like imagine you have a phone and you get Mozilla Wi-Fi on here. And wherever you go in the world, you get reliable, fast internet without bullshit. Like we got Firefox when there was only IE 4 and 5, or IE 6, I guess. Like, imagine a company that stands up for you, that does things like persona or do not track, that just fucks all the ad industry and gets away with it, but in the telco space. Like, how great would that be? And it was a bunch of hackers who set up Mozilla that did that. We can just set up a telco company and do the same. It may take 10 years, doesn't fucking matter. It's on the right side of history. This will prevail. The current system is obviously broken, and we can just go in and fix it and do the right thing. I'm really, really, really excited about it, so I really hope we get to do this one day. And then this whole model doesn't have to be just a network carrier, and then there's Mozilla, but like just about every company should be set up this way. And if you build something really useful, that we should figure out how people get paid to build it, but then we should think about the bigger societal value of this, and this is really important. There's a notion that companies are evil. The word company means a bunch of people, and we need to get back to that meaning, that companies are made of people. Like, it's company policy that we send you emails from a do not reply email address. Like, it doesn't make, like, a person decides that I can't communicate back, they're just spamming me. That's so wrong. We need to get back to the notion that a company is made up of people that are part of society, and it's all about these relationships between people, and that's what makes things great. We need to get back to that. All right, this is my business rant. I have a little bit more about community. And there's one more rant in here, and then I'll keep saying nice things again for the rest, promised. So, the IT industry lives in a culture of perpetual negativism, criticism. Who here put up, had an idea and posted it on Twitter, on Hacker News, somewhere online, and then somebody came back and said, that's the stupidest idea in the world. And what did you do with the idea? Never ever think about it again because people hurt you. That's terrible. This is like, I have a great idea and getting kicked in the balls, or between the legs, wherever. This is terrible. And we live in a culture where this is cool, where people make a shtick out of being negative, especially online where it's easy. Like in person, a little bit of friction is nice. I can bullshit a little bit with Tim because we know each other and there's a relationship here and we don't really mean it. And people who don't know it may be like, why is he offensive to that guy? But we know each other and it's fine. But online, it's really, really hard to see these relationships. And maybe it's just a bunch of groups bullshitting each other, and then other people say, oh, it's cool to be an asshole, so I'll be an asshole now. And that's just a perpetual thing now. I don't want to single out Hacker News because it happens on all other social networks. It happened on Newsnet 30 years ago as well, maybe 20 years ago as well, and it still happens everywhere, so it's not the fault of a particular medium. But this negativity kills innovation, it kills progress. For every brittle idea where there was a kernel of a good idea that needed to flourish and to be polished into something great, for every one of them that got killed, we lose out as a community. And for every one of them that was really good, somebody else had to get around and come up with the idea and have the courage to carry it through. We need to change this. We need to live in a culture where you have a great idea, let's work on this. So I'm saying, or I'm suggesting this phrase, if you don't have anything nice to say, shut the fuck up. All right, that was my last rant. Thanks. We need to build a culture of support and nurturing great ideas. And my example for that I've heard from is Pixar. You've all seen one or more Pixar movies. If not, you've heard that they're all great. That most of them, I think all of them are great, at least financial success. Some of them have critical acclaim. A bunch of them should have won the Oscar. And the culture at Pixar is and was early on the idea that ideas are brittle, that are easy to break, that it's hard, that it's very easy to kill an idea. So what they do at Pixar is, instead of when somebody comes up with an idea, and doing great movies is really, really hard work, and you need great people and need to allow them to explore ideas and to work together to make them better. At Pixar, they have a culture. If somebody comes up in the morning, comes back in the morning and says, "Hey, I had this idea, so and so," and then the feedback round is, "That's a great idea, but what about if we do that?" So it may be a crappy idea, but there may be a thing there. It may be a good idea, but it has a few rough edges. Instead of going, "Well, that's bullshit because of 1, 2, 3, fuck you," we go, "Oh, that's an interesting idea, but what if we look at this from another light?" Or what if we add this aspect here, and then suddenly this idea gets better. And everybody adds to it, and then the person with the original idea comes back and makes it even better. And you end up with the fantastic results that you see at Pixar. This is a great culture. We need that. We should do that, and we'll be good. It's super easy and super simple. We should just do that. And there's the topic is community. I want to highlight one more thing. Who here is familiar with an event called Rails Girls? Few. So Rails Girls, the idea is that programmers from the Rails community get together to put up like a day-and-a-half workshop to teach non-programmers how to do web apps in Rails. Pretty easy. It started in Finland, they came to Berlin, and now they're literally everywhere. There's like I think there's a Rails Girls on Saturday here. And the idea is that we get people who didn't have the privilege to have a technical education, to have a look at how things work. Because most people, like if you to show them how the web works, they get it, and they maybe don't want to make a career out of it, but they can make useful stuff. And Rails Girls helps democratizing access to this shared resource of knowledge, how to do web stuff. And after the success of Rails Girls in Berlin, it's again at Berlin JS, we invited two of the ladies that ran the workshop to talk about it at the JavaScript meetup. Just because we thought it was cool, and we're all in the same space anyway, so we just had them talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes, and it was so inspiring. And we said, "Fuck, we need to do this, but for JavaScript. The Rails is great and everything, but we're JavaScript people, so we need to do this, but for JavaScript." So we sat together and came up with a course that we call JavaScript for Absolute Beginners, JSFAB, and ran it. It's over 2 days. You learn JavaScript and web application programming a little bit, and it's for non-programmers. And people go away and they know how it works now, and some of them go on to do like Code Academy stuff to learn more. And it's really cool. The Rails Girls people have been at it in a really organized way. So they do one every month. They have study groups, so if you want to keep working on the project that you started, you get together like for 2 hours a week. And you get a professional Rails developer that after his job just sits around the office for 2 more hours and coaches them and helps them through problems. And we're going from people as students in these courses to being coaches in these courses to being hired out of the courses because there are no effective Rails programmers in the course of like, say, 9 months for 0 money. That's a great community. And a lot of people see that as well. JSFAB was a pretty good success as well. And the whole idea that we have with JSFAB, but that Rails Girls as well, is what we call a forkable event. Whereas we put all the resources of running the event, like that you need to run the event, the courses, all on GitHub. And you can, if you want to do Rails Girls Edinburgh, you just get all the materials, get some volunteers, and you're good. We did the same with JSFAB. We get contributions, like we did JSFAB Stockholm and Zurich, and they send pull requests for improving the course materials. It's amazing. After the success of JS Fab and seeing what Rails Girls did, another amazing thing happened in Berlin. People saw that this is just a great way of teaching technology on a volunteer with a volunteer model, and they set up a thing they call Open Tech School. And Open Tech School itself is a forkable organization. So you see, there's one in Berlin, Stockholm, Melbourne, Hamburg, and Zurich. You can make one here. All the materials are up on GitHub. You can fork all the materials from how to set up the organization to how to set up individual events, how to get coaches for particular topics, how to make advertising for the workshops. All of that is freely available in the full open source spirit. You can just do one as well. There's other things that go in a similar direction. Here, I think it's a thing called Code Club. There's also Coda Dojo from Ireland. A little bit different is a hacker school that Etsy does. There's money involved, but it's a little bit different. We also have Nodecopter, which gets people to use fucking flying robots. How awesome is that? I think over the past year, I realized that this should just be open school. This is just a model for everything. If I want to learn about architecture, I should be able to go into a community college that isn't really a community college, but that is a bunch of volunteers that are eager to tell about their craft and what they know and give that back. And in return, I teach them some web programming that they can then use. That's a community I want to live in. And we're starting to build that. And I hope you all take notice and make an open tech school and take them, or do them here or take them from wherever you are. So this warms my heart. So recap time. I'll drink some water. We're on the eve of a JavaScript world domination. I hope you all agree. We also want to be on the right side of history. I hope you also agree with that. We want to build better technologies that align with what history will decide anyway, because everything else is just wasted time. We want to build better businesses that help us scale our ideas and the software, the access to the software and everything. We want to build better communities where we teach each other, where we're there for each other, where we help bring ideas to life that are really important, where we are not negative to each other. And we'll do this as the JavaScript community. We're the JavaScript people. The future is ours. Thank you.